What's up, people? How we doing? Morning, Monday morning. Uh, February 12th. Wow, halfway through the month, right? Shorter month, anyways. Leap year, too. So, last week, into Friday, we had some of those CPI revisions. This week, we're starting off with the CPI coming out on Tuesday pre market. So, today is Monday. No big news today. Tomorrow morning, right, pre-market, we have that news that's expected to move things around. So leading up into these events, generally what happens is markets are a little slow. So trade with caution today, trade smaller maybe, and really wait for some of those key regions that you really care about, which is something that we're going to be talking about into the end of this stream at where we're going to be breaking down some of the trade opportunities, levels, and whatnot that we could find in the markets. But first and foremost, let's talk about oil and energy just a smidge here. Energy sector, right, is in the news this morning as Diamondback Energy, ticker symbol FANG that you can see on my screen here, and Endeavor Energy Resources finally, right, decide on a merger to create an oil and gas behemoth worth more than $50 billion. The deal was announced earlier today while combining two rivals in the Permian Basin where M&A activity has been on fire, and many have been scrambling to scoop up top-tier drilling acreage in the area that extends from West Texas to New Mexico, which has helped propel American oil production to record levels. So the U.S. is currently producing around 13.3 million barrels of crude per day, which is way more than any country on the globe, including even Saudi Arabia. The output growth has helped tame gas prices and perhaps more importantly undermine the influence of OPEC and Russia following the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And at times this has clashed with the Biden administration's clean energy agenda, though for the time being inflation concerns and energy independence seem to be of top priorities, especially if they can be paired with climate spending towards the green transition. So producers also know that while times are good, demand can come down or eventually plateau, especially with the U.S. currently exporting more oil than nearly every member of OPEC. One doesn't have to look too far as to the 2014-2016 downturn, which hammered the industry and was largely driven by a supply glut. Boom-bust cycles are normal for the oil sector, but many are preparing in advance this time around, turning to mergers and consolidating to squeeze more profits from their production and raise their competitiveness as the cheapest barrels on the market. So jump-starting the merger and acquisition in the Permian Basin, ExxonMobil agreed to acquire Pioneer Natural Resources in a deal of about $60 billion last October, something that we talked about. And it was followed by Chevron CVX's $53 billion all-stock deal for Hess, while Occidental Petroleum, right, Warren Buffett's favorite, it seems, later announced a $12 billion agreement to buy West Texas producer Crown Rock. And last month, APA also agreed to purchase small rival Callon Petroleum in an all-stock deal valued at $4.5 billion, boosting its presence in the Permian Basin. So with oil, right, you can see that Diamondback is up here pre-market, but crude oil has bounced from last week. Kind of pulling down here slightly as we can check on the overnight. Realistically, we have a region to break through, and that's going to be the $80 level. If we can actually pop that coming into the next few weeks, I think the upside is going to be priced in pretty heavily, and we can go and tag those mid-80s. And even beyond. We're creating slightly higher lows and holding out this distribution low into these like 70, 71 areas. So I'll be watching. Like I said, I've talked about oil for a while now, liking it for the long side. Like I've said before, I do still like it for the long side. That week, I think last week or the week before, I can't remember when was this dip. Monday, right? It seemed like Monday and last week seemed like, well, last Monday and the week before seemed like a nice little gift on oil to get back on the long side here to see if we can propel even higher. I think that a lot of people are looking for the long side on oil, but realistically, it's going to be one of those time trades where we're gonna have to wait quite a bit, in my opinion, to see this thing really show its full potential. Where a lot of people are gonna be in and out of these moves realistically, as it pops, it drops, so on and so forth, creating more volume in this. Now, another thing to take a look at: robotaxis, right? Is safety concerns over driverless vehicles continue to rise. A Waymo robotaxi was vandalized and set on fire in San Francisco's Chinatown district Saturday night, and one of the biggest attacks on self-driving cars to date. So Waymo vehicle surrounded and then graffitied. Windows were broken and firework lit inside the vehicle, which ultimately caught the entire vehicle on fire. That's what the San Francisco Fire Department said on Twitter, or X. The cause of the attack remains unknown, but what happened as people were celebrating Chinese Lunar New Year with fireworks, Waymo, a unit of Alphabet or Google, right? One of my most dear companies, said that the vehicle was not transporting anyone at the time of the incident and no injuries were reported. You can see Google hasn't necessarily been hit by this news, but we'll see where this kind of progresses and where this continues. So, to further this, we can look at some news out of NATO before we take a look at what we got going on this week and what we got going on in terms of the markets, right? We'll take a look at the S&P 500 futures. But all in all, nearly 3 weeks after Ankara ratified Sweden's entry into NATO, the U.S. Congress has cleared $23 billion military sale of Lockheed Martin F-16 jets, as well as missiles and bombs to Turkey. And Jeff Flake, U.S. ambassador to the country, lauded the approval, saying that it was critical to NATO's strength. But tensions were mounting elsewhere over the weekend. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg slammed Donald Trump's threat of encouraging Russia to do whatever the hell they want, right, if they attack NATO, a member who didn't contribute enough to the alliance. Any suggestion that the allies will not defend each other undermines all of our security, he warned, and puts American and European soldiers at increased risk. So Lockheed Martin, right, this one, we've seen continued upside pressure over the last few years here in this, and recent pull downs, right? Nothing has really been too affected by this name, but realistically, I don't really watch this one, but I'm probably going to keep a closer eye on this as potential tensions continue to rise here. Now, one of the main things that I do want to talk about is going to be the S&P 500 futures, and with CPI coming out pre-market tomorrow, where is this? Oh, that's not it. With CPI coming out pre-market tomorrow, realistically, I don't expect too much coming out of the S&P 500 futures to start out the week. Oh my God. More so expect kind of sideways movement, and we've kind of rectified that from the Sunday overnight session, as you can see here. What's been going on is just sideways movement on the Sunday. Friday, as expected, we just held the bid realistically all day long. Classic Friday movement. We're still in an area of imbalance. There's a lot of volume being created around here. That 5045 to 48 area is going to be a main resistance with all this volume pulling out. I think that, yeah, okay, there's a potential to pull back. I want you guys to remember that into the 50, 35 area, 36 area, there's a huge amount of buy volume, right? Imbalanced buy volume, where longs were trapped on the pre-market session, did well to hold their ground into the end of the session. So they're going to want to try and buy that area, then down into this mid-20, low 20 is going to be one of the final straws for these longs. But I expect kind of sideways movement and chop on the S&P 500 futures as everyone prepares for CPI to come out. Also today, we have at 1 p.m. Fed's Kashkari speaking, which Fed member into the afternoon could bolster some movement into the S&P later on in the session rather than us focused on the morning session. I think into this news and sideways movement expected, I'm going to keep eyes on NASDAQ and see how those futures move around, because they have higher volatility in general and move a decent bit more than the S&P. Especially the S&P, I think the highs around 46, the lows around 40. We're in about a 6-point range on the overnight, the ETH session, which isn't looking right, like super opportunistic realistically. But I'm still bullish all in all, expecting some pullbacks to get bought up until we start closing back under 5017.18 on the S&P 500 futures. I think until that happens, they're most likely going to be piling into longs to continue some of this upside momentum, where the reality of 5100 S&P can be true. Now, into the CPI tomorrow pre-market, there's most likely going to be decent volatility that could shake things up, so that's something that we have to concern ourselves with as we enter that phase into the afternoon session and into the morning session tomorrow morning, which is something that we are going to be trading. So, with all that being said, there's not too much to start the week off. I'm going to be taking it slowly. Let's open up our live trading room for our futures traders here this morning and see what we get in the equity markets mainly. Maybe we could look at some Russell as well. But all in all, I don't expect too much movement from the S&P 500 futures to start the week off. Now, one of the main things that I like to look at is volume coming into the opening session, and the volume on the ETH so far. We've got about 20 minutes until the market opens. The volume is under 90,000 contracts on the S&P 500 futures, which is very, very, very low, right? Extremely low. So with that, where is... Yeah, that's about it. I was just looking for something else, looking at some other volume, but very, very low, under 90,000. That's disrespectfully low, right? Some of these days, a lot of traders aren't even going to touch the market. Maybe we can look at some options and whatnot. I have Tesla, Nvidia, and AMD up on the screen that maybe we could find some kind of movement from that. Otherwise, right, let's open up our live trading room. Let's see how these futures move. And with that being said, I hope everyone has an amazing start to the week. Remember, slow start to the week as everyone is waiting for CPI tomorrow morning. So, cheers. Let's open up the live trading room and start this week off right.